After 2 years, my boyfriend says he can't commit because of stress on his cat from my son. Is this real or an excuse? I have been in a romantic relationship with this man for more than 2 years. I'm quite selective when it comes to choosing partners, and I communicate very directly. Initially, I had strong feelings for this man, exceptionally strong feelings. I believed I was fortunate to have found him. His peculiarities complemented mine. He was incredibly sweet, compassionate, intelligent, possessed fascinating skills and interests, did not judge me for my eccentricities, embraced his quirks, and made life enjoyable in an intriguing way. We shared a wonderful sexual relationship, and as both introverts, we sometimes enjoyed stepping into extroverted territory. We both appreciated cats, music, culture, and occasionally explored nature, though not excessively, which is uncommon for our area. When I began this relationship, I was very explicit about my primary love language being quality time and my expectation that anyone interested in a serious relationship with me would eventually move in with me within a reasonable time frame. I desire a partner to come home to, sleep beside, and share a living space with. I did not impose a strict timeline on him, but I did mention that this form of commitment had caused issues in my previous relationship, and around the 2-year mark, I began to discuss the possibility of cohabitation. He was very transparent about the fact that his late wife passed away due to cancer. He indicated that he feels like a mere shadow of his former self and believes he will never return to who he once was. He considers himself permanently affected by his loss. I thought I understood his perspective, as I have experienced significant losses in my life. However, I have come to realize that people react very differently to trauma and grief. Around 2.5 years into our relationship, I brought up the topic of cohabitation. It led to a major conflict. He informed me that it wasn't me he struggled to commit to or live with, but my son. I have a 12-year-old son, and I had made it explicitly clear to him before we even met that we are a packaged deal. My son has special needs, as he is high-functioning autistic with ADHD. I also communicated this early on. He has known my son for approximately 1.5 years now. None of my situation has caught him by surprise, nor has he lacked the opportunity to back away. His primary reason for hesitating to share a home with me is his concern that my son might stress his cat. You may find this hard to believe, but these are his exact words. He claims that his cat was his sole companion after his wife passed away, and he is adamant about protecting her from any form of distress. It is worth noting that I have raised my son alongside 2 cats. He is not a cruel person. Rather, he is an empathetic individual who loves animals. He may be a bit noisy at times, which can be challenging for them. One of my cats isn't particularly fond of him because of his spirited nature, while the other enjoys his affection. It truly depends on the cat. The year 2025 has been extremely challenging for me. My son faced suspension from his before and after school care program. Though it was eventually revoked, my television broke, I discovered that I have a labral tear in my hip, which has caused me pain for over 1.5 years and requires surgery. I started school to change my career. One of my cats passed away. I experienced severe water damage to my home, and I am currently living amid construction chaos. In the midst of all this turmoil, I lost my composure with my partner recently. The incident began when he asked me a question that I had already answered several times, a habit of his. I expressed my annoyance at this behavior, and when he requested a specific example, I provided it. His response came across as so condescending and patronizing that I reached my breaking point. I vented about every small issue that had been bothering me in our relationship, especially his inability to commit. I was harshly brief with him, issuing an ultimatum and stating that he needed to make a choice rather than run away from it. I am aware that I have a temper and was simply overwhelmed with frustration towards him. I want to clarify that I was not disrespectful when I vented. I did not resort to name-calling or vindictiveness. However, I was clearly fed up with him. My tone was somewhat sarcastic and harsh. I confronted his misogyny, a disagreement we had often, and pointed out some of the ways I felt he exhibited narcissistic behaviors in our interactions. Alongside my deep frustration with his inability to commit to our relationship, or even take my needs seriously when I addressed them. This man has repeatedly claimed that he is much more sensitive than the average individual, which I agree with entirely. He certainly is. He has a strong aversion to confrontation and tends to avoid it at all costs. It feels painful for him when I am, what I believe is, merely direct. He often interprets my comments about his actions and their impact on my feelings as personal attacks on his character. A frequent reply from him, when I provide any form of critical feedback regarding his behavior, is that he is not a bad person. In contrast, I am much more stoic and resilient. I have faced considerable trauma in my life, which has made me exceptionally adept at compartmentalizing, remaining unaffected by difficult situations, and shutting down emotionally. It has reached a point where I do not believe our personalities and styles for handling conflict are compatible, at least not with the emotional and mental tools I possess for managing his responses to me. The day following my outburst, his reaction was that he required several weeks of separation. I expressed my belief that this would not be productive and that I preferred to work through the issues. It felt to me like yet another avoidance tactic on his part, which I openly stated. He consented to have a phone conversation the next day. We engaged in a much calmer discussion where we addressed a lot of issues, many of the same topics we had previously discussed. I felt a sense of relief as we talked through these concerns and began to think that our relationship still had potential. However, I soon started contemplating the logistics. I doubt his capacity to commit to me. At this moment, I am uncertain whether I even want to continue with him. I'm not convinced I want him in my living space. It is distressing, especially considering the 2 years we have shared. We have a strong emotional bond. The hardest aspect of potentially breaking up is the abrupt disruption of our routines. That change is profoundly noticeable. We have agreed to meet in person this Sunday to discuss our relationship. My intention is to communicate that I am willing to remain in this relationship and work on it, provided he can commit to the idea of moving in with me and my son sometime in the future. To clarify, I do not even want him to move in with me right now. My trust has been shaken after everything that has transpired. I care for him deeply, but my trust is not where it should be. I am prepared to put in the effort to rebuild that trust, and I anticipate that it will be quite a challenge if we choose to head in that direction. We both have many areas to improve. What I seek to understand is your perspective. Am I being too lenient with him? Is his concern for his cat unreasonable? Am I not putting in enough effort for this relationship? I genuinely do not feel I have a solid understanding of the situation since I am overwhelmed by everything else. Please provide your honest and straightforward opinions. Story 2. My GF, 19F, has massive insecurities, and I, 20M, don't know what to do. The title essentially summarizes the situation. I am a 20-year-old male, and I met my girlfriend, who is 19, through my college's Instagram page about a month before we commenced school. We first encountered each other in person during the dorm welcome event in the initial week of college. Our relationship progressed rapidly, possibly due to the intense emotions associated with such a significant transition. In the first few months, everything was wonderful. We were both falling in love with one another and embracing college life, and she brought me more happiness than I had anticipated. However, during the Christmas break, while she was home on the East Coast, I took a 3-day trip with my high school friends to Tahoe for New Year's. One of my friends, a 20-year-old female who identifies as a lesbian, has a cabin there. My friend group consisted of myself, another male, and 5 females. My girlfriend saw a post from my male friend about the trip in my tagged posts, which caused a significant reaction. I had informed her about the trip, but had not mentioned the specifics of who was attending because, at the time, we had yet to determine everyone's availability. She expressed that it felt like a betrayal to go on a trip she knew would upset her. The argument lasted several hours, and she would periodically revisit the subject. Since then, she has only grown more insecure, partly due to the influence of social media. I acknowledge my role in this, but I made changes months ago. Nonetheless, she continues to bring up my past actions on social media, for example, liking photos of friends in revealing outfits without commenting, and minor issues, like me mentioning something funny a female coworker said, and makes hurtful remarks. In moments of anger, she has called me a pig, claimed I am just like all other men, and accused me of not being satisfied with her. I have never suggested anything that would lead her to think that, and I try my best to reassure her in our relationship, by addressing her insecurities and evaluating whether her reactions to trivial matters are justified. For context, her father cheated on her mother while she was in high school, which I believe is a significant source of her insecurities and fear of my infidelity. Her parents are now divorced, and she resides solely with her mother and older brother. Ironically, her best friend and roommate, also 20, seems to be a habitual cheater and has been unfaithful to every partner since I met her. Because I still love the person my girlfriend was when we first got together, I have remained committed and have made all the compromises she has requested. I removed over 130 women from my Instagram and blocked an online friend, who was 19-20 at the time, with whom I had been friends for 9 months prior to starting my relationship, because my girlfriend considered our friendship inappropriate. I met this friend once through a mutual acquaintance, and we quickly connected once we began texting. We developed a solid friendship where we provided each other with life advice and generally enjoyed our conversations. I believe it may have edged into the talking stage before my girlfriend and I officially met, but it never advanced beyond that. When I began discussing my girlfriend and how wonderful she was, my friend was genuinely pleased for me. When my girlfriend discovered this friend's existence and the frequency of our communication, she became furious and insisted that I block her. After some discussion, I agreed to block her since I understood my girlfriend's perspective. I expected that to resolve the situation, but she continues to invoke my former friend's name whenever she perceives interactions with other girls as disrespectful, whether it involves speaking to a girl for just 20 seconds in a dining hall or being part of a group assignment with a female classmate. She has started to realize that her behavior is incredibly toxic and damaging for both of us. Since she wants to avoid feeling that pain, yet also wishes to keep me in her life, she is eager to make changes. However, even though she recognizes her issues, she still becomes stressed and upset over trivial matters, sometimes unrelated to other girls. For instance, I attended a gathering with friends this past weekend and had a cigarette for the first time, which I despised. I made a commitment over a decade ago not to smoke after witnessing the impact of my grandfather's 3-pack-a-day habit, which contributed to his death at age 52 before I was born. I will not smoke again. Nevertheless, I succumbed to peer pressure once, and when I revealed this to my girlfriend the following day, I anticipated a light-hearted admonishment or playful teasing about smelling like smoke. Instead, she shut down for about 10 minutes, as she often does when upset, and once she emerged from that state, she stated that my decision to break my vow makes her question my loyalty in our relationship. I have been entirely faithful, so this troubled me. I had planned to stay in her room that night because her roommates were away, but after discussing the cigarette over dinner, I became frustrated by yet another example of her amplifying something trivial and decided to prioritize tranquility for the rest of the evening. I have no doubt that she loves me and wants to be with me, but managing her insecurities and anxiety episodes is exhausting. I am pursuing a demanding double major and am an ROT cadet, so my available time is extremely limited due to academic and career commitments. Nevertheless, I make time every day to spend with her, share meals, study, and converse generally at least 2 to 3 hours daily. Recently, much of that time has turned either silent as we study or loud as she yells at me for issues that occurred months prior. I have told her that she needs to address this behavior, or our relationship cannot continue, and she seems to grasp that concept. However, she also claims she does not know how to change and worries that she is just broken. I do not believe anyone is beyond the capacity for growth, so I have continuously offered her opportunities for improvement. Although it has been about a month, and she has made some progress, there have also been moments that have been extremely challenging, arguably the worst in our relationship. During this period, I have grown increasingly resentful due to the damage she has caused to our relationship, which results in my becoming upset when she shuts down without explanation. My question is whether she can genuinely change after maintaining the same mindset for so long, 14 months since the Tahoe trip, or if it is time to end our relationship. I do not want to leave her, as our relationship is wonderful when she is not upset, but I also recognize the significant stress she adds to my life. Is there a possibility for her to change in a meaningful and lasting way, or is our relationship doomed? If not, How can I respectfully and calmly end things so that neither of us harbors ill will toward the other? To summarize, my girlfriend, 19, gets upset almost daily over minor issues linked to past events. She seems unable to accept that I have changed and eliminated the triggers that once stressed her. Is there a chance she will recognize this and revert to the person I fell in love with? Or has that moment passed, and is it time to part ways? Story 3. I just wanted my deposit back. Approximately 10 years ago, my wife, who was then my girlfriend, and I made the decision to cohabit. She was tired of residing in a dormitory, my lease was expiring, and we had a family friend seeking someone to inhabit a small granny flat located beneath their house. I mention beneath because they resided on a steep hill where the flat sat below the main house with an entrance at the back, providing us with a stunning view, a pool, which we will discuss shortly, a fire pit, and more. The rent fit within our budget, and the landlord lets refer to her, as Mary agreed to reduce it by $100 if we handled some yard work, cleaned the pool, and so forth. My parents have owned several rental properties throughout my life, and I have assisted them with maintenance and even participated in a few court cases alongside them. This detail will be relevant later. Initially, everything was wonderful for a few months. Then, Mary and her spouse began to argue. Their disagreements escalated into shouting matches, stomping above us, and throwing objects. I could not comprehend how people could harbor such intense anger toward one another so frequently and still remain together. Eventually, I decided to send them an email expressing that we felt uncomfortable with the fighting and wanted to ensure they were all right. Their response was, "You're fortunate to have a place this nice." Mary started to criticize the yard work and pool maintenance I was performing, insisting that I vacuum and skim the saltwater pool without using chemicals. Even though saltwater pools require far less chlorine than traditional ones, they still need some. She demanded that I stop using the lawnmower and instead use a weed whacker because the mower was old and worn out such trivial matters. The final straw came when a driver was shot during a gang incident across the street. We decided it was best to cut our losses and leave. A month later, we found a new apartment and a roommate, one of my wife's college friends, who was available, which suited us perfectly since we were on a month-to-month lease at our current place. We informed Mary via email that we planned to move out in 30 days. At that point, she became unhinged. She attempted to conduct daily inspections of the granny flat, calling and emailing us every day with chores around the property that she insisted we complete, and would pound on her floor, which was our ceiling, if she heard even a whisper. Daily inspections required a 24-hour notice, which she never provided. Then she attempted to bring prospective tenants over to view the flat without any notice, at which point we firmly told her to leave us alone. Finally, 2 weeks before our move-out date, she sent a pest control representative to our flat while I was at work and my wife was in class. Our cat was home alone, and we received a notification about pesticides spraying via text around the same time the technician arrived. I hurried home after work, went upstairs to request a copy of the pest control receipt. I suffer from severe allergies to most pesticides, so I needed to know what had been used. She went to her office and returned with a copy that listed every single chemical checked off. I immediately took the document, rushed downstairs, grabbed the cat and a handful of clothes, and drove to my parents' house, where we stayed for 4 days, hoping everything would disperse in time for us to finish packing and cleaning. In the final days leading up to our move-out, Mary was away, allowing us to complete everything a day early. We had even patched nail holes, painted, cleaned the carpet, and my mother helped prepare the place for the next tenants. It was immaculate, and we took photos and videos of everything. During the checkout process with Mary, we indicated that we were uncomfortable being there without filming, which is legally permissible, and she conducted a brief walkthrough before declaring everything satisfactory, but mentioned that her copier was broken, so she would need to email us the final copy. 2 days later, we received that copy, which claimed $1,400 in damages above our deposit, including charges such as, my wife had to replace a screw in a cabinet, 1 for screw, 15 for labor. I was furious. The place was immaculate. My mother, a landlord who manages her own rental preparations, had assisted us, and we had been completely non-confrontational except for recording the walkthrough. I had kept every email, text, and letter from them and began assembling a small claims case. I suspected she would be doing the same. Fortunately, I was well acquainted with my tenant rights and noted that she had violated them extensively, including email exchanges where I pointed out the 24-hour notice requirements, to which she responded. Ultimately, I contacted the exterminator. The conversation unfolded as follows. "Hello, you sprayed my flat without my consent, as my landlord ordered it without notifying me, and my cat was inside, and you used every chemical listed on your receipt. We absolutely did not. Here is a copy of the work order. We only placed ant traps outside." "Oh, I apologize. Thank you for clarifying." Armed with that vital piece of information, I countersued for a bad faith penalty plus our deposit. The bad faith penalty amounted to 3 times the deposit, so I was seeking a total of 4 times what we had given Mary upon our move-in. The court date arrived, and I was there early, fully prepared. Mary entered, haughty and evidently eager to put me in my place. We waited outside the courtroom for about 20 minutes until a court worker asked if anyone would be willing to go to mediation instead, given that they were fully booked. We both agreed and entered a mediation room with an arbitrator whose role was merely to maintain civility and answer any legal questions while remaining neutral. Mary presented her case, which took about 4 minutes. The arbitrator still appeared neutral. I then presented my case, outlining each violation, each falsehood, and concluded with the exterminator's work order, providing both copies. At this point, the arbitrator visibly appeared upset, doing their best to remain neutral. Mary then inquired, "Why is he asking for 4 times the deposit?" The arbitrator explained the bad faith penalty before looking at me, saying, "Would you be willing to drop the penalty and accept your deposit back?" "Sure." The arbitrator then turned to Mary, stating, "I cannot dictate your actions. However, I can share that if you choose to return to this courtroom in front of a judge, the outcome may not be favorable for you." I received my deposit back.